Hello, a very warm-hearted good evening or good afternoon to Prague. Thank you for giving me the possibility to talk to you about my recent research which concerns the problem, how is it possible that music can influence the heart, particularly the heart rate and the blood pressure. You know, there's a lot of evidence-based research in Oxford University, Cambridge, Harvard University and so on, which shows us that via music we have the possibility to regulate heart activities. Till today it was the question, how is it possible that music, that auditory stimuli can regulate the heart? The last months I did research about neuropsychological problems, neuropsychological backgrounds of those procedures which we need for cardiac music therapy. So, what is the most important? The most important is that music influences, music stimulates the inner ear, and in the inner ear, the corti organ, the sound waves are somehow transformed in order to produce neural stimuli. What is a very important fact? Music does not exist outside. Music is just produced by our brain. Outside it's nothing more than physical waves. So what is going on in the inner ear? The nerve cells in the inner ear transform the physical information of the sound wave and produce neural information, which is transported by the 8th cranial nerve to the brain stem, especially to the cochlear nucleus. What is the cochlear nucleus doing? Let's say we have the inner ear. The inner ear transports the information to the cochlear nucleus, and formerly we just thought the information is split into information to the other side and information going upwards the auditory pathway. In fact, the cochlear nucleus has a very important first function. It is able to analyze the information of the auditory stimulus transported on the nerve and to analyze the frequency, so the pitch, to analyze the length of the tone, and to analyze the volume, the strength. So, neurologically speaking, the most important basis for producing, for constructing music in our brain is the frequency, the pitch, is the second, the volume, and is the length. So what is going on after that first analysis? We are going on to the inferior colliculus in the brain stem. That is approximately where we have here the brain stem, and approximately here you see the inferior colliculus is involved in a further analysis of the sound, and what is for cardiac neurology, for cardiac music therapy, very important. It's not only a projection. We have efferent neurons which are associated with other centers in the brain which have a certain relation to nuclei, to centers in the brainstem, especially the solitary nucleus and the ambiguous nucleus, which influence heart activities. So that is at first very important finding. the auditory pathway does not only go up, but we have from the inferior colliculus efferent projections to other very important areas of the brain which are connected with the heart. The information goes up to a part of the thalamus, the medial geniculate body, which is formerly thought only as a relay station to transport the information to the cortex, especially here we have the temporal lobe, to the auditory, the primary auditory cortex, which is of course right. But what is very important, today we know also the medial geniculate body projects to other very important regions, especially the amygdala and the insular cortex. For our research in music cardiology, the insular cortex plays an enormous role. Why? Up to here, we cannot speak about musical perception. What is going on here is not at all music. We cannot hear a melody, or we cannot hear a rhythm. Here is just a preparing of what is going on in the auditory cortex. So, we are rather speaking about a physiological decoding of the auditory stimulus in order to stimulate other physiological parts. So, we have here on the one side the amygdala, on the other side the insular cortex. Two very important parts. What is now a very crucial thing? According to studies, to evidence-based studies, some researchers say that how we experience music, how we like music, does not influence heart activities. Other studies show that our aesthetic experience has a certain influence on the heart activity. That is contradictory. Some studies say how I feel, how I like music does not influence the heart. Other studies maintain there's a huge influence. How can we bring that together? A certain solution is given by the results of those studies. Also, the auditory cortex influences both the insular cortex and the amygdala. That means what? We call that the dualistic principle of how music stimulates the heart. We have a physiological side influencing the amygdala, influencing the insular cortex, and we have information from the cortex going to the insular cortex. What does that mean? Both the physiological structure of sound information and the cognitive information. So how I process, or how we process music in a cognitive and an aesthetic way, both influence those integrating and regulating structures. Via that integration, physiological information and cognitive information, both sides are integrated to the insular cortex in the amygdala and now influencing the heartbeat and the heart pressure. How do they influence? Both are interconnected with cardiac nuclei in the brainstem, as I told you, especially the solitary nucleus and the ambiguous nucleus. That is the neural side. We also have another path, an endocrinological path, which is also on one side stimulated via the amygdala. What is going on? The first part is absolutely the same. The first part is going upwards, the auditory pathway and stimulation of the amygdala. On the other side, stimulation via the auditory cortex, and they influence the hypothalamus. They influence special frontal nuclei of the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is able, we know that, via noradrenaline and so on, to influence the heart. What is now the difference? Via the endocrinological side, by the endocrinological path, it needs time. So that means we can influence the heart pressure, but we rarely can influence directly the heartbeat. So I rather can influence via the hormone system the activity or calming down the heart. Via the neural path, however, I have the possibility to directly and very quickly inform heart centers in the brain stem. Via that, the neural part, we can explain what we know from very early studies, that some patients, some people react in a very special ratio. That means the heartbeat and the pulse of the music are coordinated, are the same. That would not be possible via hormones. Hormones rather can push or can calm down the heart, but have no mathematical relationship. So we have to take into account, we have the neural part and we have the endocrinological part. And we have the dualistic principle, that means physiological and cognitive influences, results of how music is, how those sound waves are shaped, influence. What does that mean? That means today we know we have a novel model how to explain via the brain, via brain activities, how music can influence the heart. That has on the one side consequences for people with high blood pressure, has also relevance for patients with an elevated resting pulse, resting heart rate. So we can use that, especially in cardiac rehabilitation. Today some centers, cardiological centers in the world, also discuss how can I combine music with medicine, with pharmacological treatment, in order to reduce pharmacological treatment and protect the kidneys, protect the brain. So, music therapy in cardiology is not only that patients like music, that patients get relaxed, but we can measure today very direct influence of specific music on the heart. I'm very convinced that will be a very important future aspect for music therapy in medicine. I wish you and the Congress in Prague good success, and thank you very much once again for giving me that possibility. Bye-bye, na shledanou.